What are the three big questions that a business owner needs to handle in his or her everyday life? I'll give you the answers today. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Erkka Suvanto. Some of you call me EJ. I'm still the guy on social media who wants to build a legacy and pass on all the information and life learnings to each and every one of you. Let's look at the three questions that every single entrepreneur needs to face and needs to handle in his or her everyday life. Number one, when to push and when to pivot. Number two, how much to spend versus how much to invest. Last but not least, number three, how much to do by yourself versus how much to delegate. Success in life or as a business owner often boils down to these three. Let's dig deeper. I'll give you some real life examples, put some own skin in the game, and share some stories from my personal life to put this into context. Let's start with number one. When to push and when to pivot. So topic number one, push versus pivot. What does it mean? Pushing means that we obviously keep grinding, and pivoting means that we make a change in direction, go someplace else or do something else. So we all know that working, if you want to achieve something in life, there are a couple of requirements. Number one, you have to work long, you need to work hard. There's no way around it. For others, being consistent and grinding day after day is natural, while to others, it's easier to look at different opportunities. To these people, grass seems to be always greener on the other side of the fence. I personally belong to the former category. It's a lot easier for me to keep grinding, keep pushing, and it's been actually very, very hard for me to know when to pivot because it's in my DNA to just keep going and finding solutions, but that's not necessarily good either. So in my case, knowing when enough is hard. I haven't always mastered that when it comes to personal relationships or business. I keep pushing. I try to bang my head against the wall, and sometimes the concrete wall is so thick that there's no way going through it. So in those cases, in hindsight, looking back, would have been a lot easier to just simply pivot. Accept the fact that sometimes the idea doesn't work, because there are two elements to this. There's the idea and the execution. What does that mean? A business has two types of risks. There's the idea risk and the execution risk. What are those examples? So an idea risk would be something that, let's say a new piece of technology, something that replaces an existing platform or a service that's well known, that would require a lot of hardware, a lot of software innovation. That would be a very complex business idea. If anyone, let's say an investor, an entrepreneur wanted to pursue that type of a goal, he or she would need to deal with two types of risks. There's the risk of that idea that we just mentioned and the execution, because every single business needs to be operated. It needs to be managed on a daily basis. So there are two types of risks, the execution and the idea. So sometimes when it comes to push and pivot, it's hard to know whether your project is about me or the idea. Because me often is related to execution, and idea obviously the same as in this example on this line. I personally prefer businesses that are well established. Maybe I'm simple, maybe I'm straightforward, but I like something that's already proven in the marketplace. Let's say dry cleaning, mowing a lawn, cutting somebody's hair, personal service, personal training, real estate, anything that's already established. Of course, within that niche or within that industry, there are different avenues that you can pursue, and sometimes it's not that simple to separate the execution from the idea. Maybe if we had to add a third element to that, that would be legislation, regulation. That's sometimes a curveball. Regulation, bureaucracy, laws, and so forth. But to simplify a little bit, idea versus execution. So as far as pushing and pivoting, so knowing when it's me or the idea. And generally I would say that 80 or 90% of the people would probably benefit by being a little more consistent, working harder on ideas. And this brings me to my next topic regarding push and pivot, and it's about seasons. So if we really want to get good at something in life, according to my theory, it takes 5 to 7 years minimum. I've divided my personal and my professional life, especially my professional life, into different seasons. If I'm 47 years old now, maybe I have 25 to 30 years left. So dividing that into 5 to 7 year seasons, so that gives you an idea how many I have left. Let's say I have 4 to 5 seasons left, depending on how you look at it. So every new opportunity that I pursue, I put my focus on, I need to look at that from the seasonality perspective. So if I want to get good at something, I need to make sure that I have enough time reserved for that. So that's why people who hop from one opportunity to another never really get to see the benefits of putting their 100% effort on something. So if you really want to get good at something, it requires focus and a lot of work. And when it comes to wealth advice or investing advice, people often tell you to diversify. But those people who tell you to diversify, they made their fortunes, if money is your objective, by focusing on one topic and then getting really good at that. And then they became wealthy or rich, and then they started diversifying. But it's hard to compete against people if your 100% focus is divided into 5 different buckets. So each and every opportunity gets 20%. With 20%, if you try to compete against somebody who puts his or her everything into a project, say 100%, so 20 versus 100, it's not possible. So to get really good at something, you need to work long enough and hard enough and put all your focus and energy on it. So push versus pivot. So when it comes to when do I then know, coming back to the original question, when is enough really enough? To me, it boils down to interest and whether I truly enjoy my work anymore. Of course, everything becomes a grind at some point. But I need to first and foremost understand that whether it's my hobby that I turn into a business or just a quote unquote regular job, it becomes work. It becomes like eating dirt or going through the grind every day, no matter what. So we better make sure that we enjoy the grind and the daily work, because there's no way around it. Within a 5 or 7 year season, you can imagine how many ups and downs we have to face during that time. So, but when regardless of that, understanding and accepting that it's a grind, there's going to be ups and downs, but still, I need to be able to enjoy that grind, as crazy as it sounds. Because if we are always outcome driven, we work or start a business to get rich, or to get to our end goal, I would argue that we will always fail. We can start a business, become entrepreneurs, or start training at the gym because of the work, because of the grind, because of the process, not because of what we might achieve at the end. So understanding that it's a grind, and then after that, if we don't enjoy the grind anymore, then my rule of thumb for myself is that then I allow myself to pivot, look at different opportunities. So that's really there's no really other way. But to summarize topic number 1, everything requires work. It takes a very long time. And no matter whether it's your hobby or another interest, it starts to feel like work at some point anyhow, accepting that. And then when you don't enjoy that work anymore, then be my guest. Give yourself a free pass and do something else, since we all only have one life, so to say. That was number 1, push or pivot. Moving on. Topic number 2, how much to spend versus how much to invest. We can look at this from personal perspective and business. And I'm going to tell you what works for me. So early on, I was probably 15, 16, 17 years old. I didn't understand the concept of cash flow or anything, but in my mind, for whatever reason, maybe it was my upbringing or maybe it was in my DNA, but I always had this rule of thumb that money coming in versus money going out. So this had to be bigger, meaning positive, what's called positive cash flow. So I started, maybe in hindsight, you can say that I was savvy when it comes to my investing and my personal finances, but I started investing my money, whether it was my summer job or I got some birthday money or Christmas money. I always put a little bit on the side. Some of that I spent on things that I enjoyed, but most of it I saved and then later invested. I started buying some mutual funds and stocks, but really real estate started to be my main thing. So pretty early, me and my brother started buying properties, rentals that we still, for the most part, have, and they generate positive cash flow now. But that was my thing. But it really starts with understanding that it's about cash flow. So money coming in has to always exceed money going out. On the business side, it gets a little more tricky. So my rule of thumb here is that I always have to have 6 months worth of buffer in the bank to cover payroll, cover all my fixed expenses, and to have a little bit of a rainy day fund. So 6 months is my rule of thumb there. But everything beyond that, I invest to grow the business. Invest to grow. And then it really boils down to what stage or what kind of maturity my business is in based on what I need to invest my money in. Most companies under $1 million a year in revenue need to promote more. So if I was 1 to 3 employees under $1 million a year, most of my extra savings would go towards promoting and marketing my business. We talked about this in the previous videos about how there are 4 ways how we can promote. We can contact strangers, we can reach out to people we know, we can run paid ads, and we can post organic social media content, those 4 ways. But business always grows until its next bottleneck. So identifying what that bottleneck is really key, and that's also hard. Sometimes we need to test different versions or different plans before we really know where the bottleneck is. Sometimes it's recruiting, sometimes it's sales talent, sometimes it's marketing and promoting activities. But as a rule of thumb, if we're under $1 million a year, which is primarily my focus here, so small business owners, so I would say that put all your money, put all your extra eggs in that marketing basket, because we can never promote enough. And also remember, there was that 4-hour rule for every day. In addition to running the day-to-day, we need to spend 4 hours every day on promoting our business. Number 3. How much to do by yourself versus how much to delegate. This is a big one. Personally, number 3 and number 2 are my hardest for me personally. So an old saying goes like this: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you're going to go far, go together. What does that mean? A one-person company, there is no drama, there is no HR issues, there is no other people to manage, there is nobody to catch up with. So you can go alone, you can go really fast. Your speed is pretty good. But how far you can go is a different story, because at some point you run out of runway, so to say. Because when you're a one-person company, you have to do everything. And regarding number 2, about how to spend or how much to spend versus how much to invest, we talked about running the day-to-day. And a one-person firm or a company where the founder, the owner, does everything from A to Z, starting with bookkeeping, putting together the websites and sales calls and maybe some purchasing and research and development, depending on the scope of the business, it gets really hard. Then in addition to those daily fires that you have to put out, you need to promote if you're small, like we discussed. So you can't get really far. My personal record, and I'm not giving myself any credit, it's mostly because I was silly and dumb and just wanted to do everything by myself. I got up to a 5 million a year revenue doing everything by myself. But it wasn't healthy. It made no sense, but I just wanted to see how far I could take it. But the reason why I personally didn't hire more employees was that I just recognized that I had some personal issues, insecurities, or I wasn't, as far as emotional humility and emotional intelligence goes, I wasn't as mature as I should have been. I had managed plenty of people during my corporate years, and I would say, pretty tired of that, and not having a large team was fresh and new to me at that point. So I wanted to see really and test my personal capabilities as far as how much I can grow my business all by myself. And I, believe it or not, this kind of sounds silly, but I took pride in the fact that I had everything on my shoulders. But in hindsight, I wouldn't do it that way anymore. But I'm glad I did, because now I can talk about it and I have the experience of knowing what it really is to try to do everything by yourself. So going fast, yes, you can do it when you go alone, but then going far, you can do it together. And this is what it boils down to. So a true business is something where you have employees. So you have people, you have processes, and you have structure. And it's really hard to establish that when you're all by yourself, because this ends up being just a self-employed job, basically. It's not a true business. There's nothing to sell here. So if you think about the evolution, so you go from job to being self-employed, kind of hard to type when it goes slower here, self-employed and business owner, and ultimately the fourth would be an investor. A few words about this. So job is you work for somebody else. Self-employed, you set up that one-person company. Let's say you are a consultant working for McKinsey, somebody else, Boston Consulting Group. Then you get tired of the corporate BS and they say, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to start my own business. I become self-employed. And I'm like, okay, I don't need any employees. All I need is my laptop, my phone, and a small rental office somewhere, and a printer. And that's it. No overhead, good profit margins. I can control my own schedule and all of that. Pretty soon you realize, if your plan is to grow that you need people. But going from self-employed to business owner is a gigantic leap, because then all the complexity comes into play. You can't sell anything here. Nobody's going to buy anything because it's all tied up to you, your reputation, your brand, in other words, personal brand. But here, when you have a business, you have people, you have a structure, you have a strategy, you have processes in place. And the idea is that somebody can run and manage this business for you. So the question would be, does your business grow? You're a true business owner if your business can grow when you are on vacation. For many small companies, under 10 people, this is impossible. So we are not really business owners. And the other question you can ask yourself, would anybody buy my business if I wasn't there? But when you can do that, then you hire somebody else to be the CEO. And then you're close to being an investor in your own company. So this would be the path. People who can complete all these steps and ultimately become investors in their own company and take an outside role, maybe be a board member, potentially chairman of the board, but something not related to the day-to-day, if their goal is to sell the business, build something sellable and then ultimately build. Congratulations, you have completed all these steps to become the ultimate business owner and investor in the end. Coming back to this, so do versus delegate. So this personally has been very hard for me. I always wanted to control stuff. I realized maybe deep down, even though 10, 15 years ago, I wasn't really ready to admit the fact that my emotional humility intelligence wasn't at a high enough level to be able to manage enough people. So therefore I gravitated towards going solo. I was also involved in my brother's business as a chairman of the board, where we actually did it the other way and ended up selling the business to a private equity company, where I got to see the process of building that business and exiting and doing that. So I got the benefits and the experiences from both worlds. So that really was super helpful for me. But at the end of the day, going far means that you go together with people, and at the end of the day, people are the thing that make the biggest difference in the end. So X's and O's versus culture, people and culture, winning culture beats strategy every day, any day. That was all for today. That was a lot. So 3 topics, 3 big questions that every entrepreneur needs to face. Hope this was helpful. If you liked the video, please like it. Please hit the subscribe button, and I will see you next time. Thank you.